Hi guys, it's the 1st of February at half past 11 or 11:33 over here in the UK, and I just want to bring a couple of reports. A couple of the events we're looking at for over the next coming days involve various things, but one of those things is a tsunami. This report says that tsunami fears are in Japan after deep sea fish associated with natural disasters are discovered by fishermen. Now, some of you may scoff at that, but it's a well documented fact that a lot of animals have a tendency to be quite sensitive or alert to earthquakes or seismic activity. These are deep water fish. They live around 3,000 feet below the surface, deep in the ocean, and they very, very rarely surface. In these instances, these oarfish are known as the messengers from the sea of God's palace in Japanese, and they rise up and beach themselves ahead of an earthquake, according to some of the Japanese. So a couple of instances where this has been repeated. In the days before the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, around 20 of the fish were found washed up in northeastern Japan. The quake that followed was one of the most destructive in recent history, killing 19,000 people and destroying the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Dozens of the fish were also discovered ahead of an 8.8 magnitude earthquake which struck in Chile in 2010. Another oarfish was found on a beach in Ogasan del Norte in the Philippines just days before a killer earthquake ravaged Mindanao Island on 11th of February, and 5 more oarfish were found around the coast in the days following the 6.3 earthquake. Now, while scientists caution that there is no definitive link between oarfish sightings and quakes, researchers admit it is possible they could sense natural disasters. Um, so there we are. Possibility of these fish having some sort of ability to detect oncoming disasters, particularly associated with seismic activity, earthquakes, which in general around Japan have a tendency to result in tsunamis. Now, the reason I bring this up is obviously one, to warn of a potential tsunami around the Japan area in the next coming days, weeks, or months, but also it could be linked to all the things that we're looking at in terms of the planned natural disasters. So they're not really natural, but that's the term I'm using. So the planned natural disasters that they've got planned, ready to roll out. Now, if a massive earthquake was to appear here, the seismic activity will obviously affect the earth around it. Now, excuse me. Now, there's two theories I'm going with here. The fault at the Nangai Trough could set off a series of earthquakes around the globe, um, basically activating a number of fault lines in different regions around the globe, generating earthquakes there, and that's biblical reference. You have multiple earthquakes in various places and generating tsunami, again, biblical reference, the sea and the waves roaring. Um, Connected to that is the possibility of if there is a tsunami caused by an earthquake in this region, it affecting Hawaii. And if, for example, water was to get into the Kilauea volcano, or even I've forgotten the name of the other one, it's just slipped from my mind. But anyway, if it was to go into either of those two volcanoes, we could have a hydrothermic eruption, which is what they probably want it to look like. Obviously, there could be nuclear devices, nuclear missiles, torpedoes involved, but that's the general gist. They want to make the volcano erupt, break off the piece of the island that's known as the Helena Slump, and cause that to fall into the ocean, generating a landslide and another tsunami scenario. So it could join up with the tsunami that comes from the Japan area, if that is to be involved. And obviously that would all move eastwards towards the west coast of the United States, affecting Washington, Oregon, California, as well as all the other islands in the Pacific and all the coasts that surround the Pacific, not to mention any large-scale seismic activity taking place in Japan is likely to wake up some volcanoes in Japan, Indonesia, basically around the entire Ring of Fire. You may have volcanoes erupting, and obviously that could be the air quotes natural events that are taking place around, or at least on the same day that we have the other events, the terrorist type events taking place, which is obviously the Super Bowl, the stadiums, the potential for the power plants, watching out for things like the Statue of Liberty, Wall Street, the One World Trade Center, not just the one in New York, but I've also got my eyes on the one in Baltimore as well. So there's a lot of different places I'm watching for potential attacks, and obviously I've read some comments from people that have had visions of multiple bombs exploding at the same time in various different locations. That lines up with some of the PlayStation games that they've got. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's Modern Warfare, but they have attacks, multiple attacks across Europe at the same time. And obviously, you guys know that if there is like these terrorist attacks that take place, my thought is they are going to be looking for someone to blame, and the most convenient person or the most convenient entity to blame would be Iran. Obviously, you know, they're a Muslim nation. The Muslims are associated with terrorism nowadays anyway. That's unfortunate, but that's how the media have portrayed them. The entire, you know, race of, or the entire religion of Muslim and the entire region of the Middle East is just kind of viewed that way. So if something was to take place in the United States and in the UK, it's likely that, you know, they'll go and try and blame Iran. Now, I believe that Iran is due to respond to the Israeli attacks that took place in January, or there could be more that come in the next couple of days, which Iran then respond to. The reason I say that is because I think that, you know, Israel may launch something, an offensive, maybe on the 3rd, on the same day where these terrorist attacks are taking place and these natural disasters, air quotes, are taking place. They may decide, obviously, if Iran is blamed, that they're going to go ahead and launch an attack against Iran, which brings me to this report that came out today, the 1st of February, and it says top Iranian general threatens to wipe out Israel in 3 days. Now, that is supposed to mean that they could wipe out Israel in 3 days, like it would take 1, 2, 3 days for them to get rid of Israel. But I'm reading it as in 3 days, as in on the 4th of February, because that lines up with the interpretation that I put out just yesterday and the day before, where the 31 in the clouds above Osama bin Laden in the iPad Go 2 video could be 3 plus 1, which is 4. And if something happens on the 3rd of February, then it's likely that if they do blame Iran for an attack on the 3rd of February, then Iran will respond and block the Strait of Hormuz on the 4th of February. And that's in 3 days' time. So I wanted to bring that report to you very quickly. And the last thing that I wanted to bring to you guys is this report about a meteor exploding above Cuba. And I think it was in yesterday's report. I was saying we need to look out for a meteor impact around this time. Now, I don't think this is the one, but I do think it's a precursor. Each time, at least this year, that I've talked about a meteor impact possibly happening, there has been some form of meteor sighting. For example, looking for a meteor impact during the blood moon eclipse, and one hits the moon. Looking for a meteor impact around this time period, and one explodes above Cuba. But as I said, I don't think this is the one, because my translations from the iPad Go 2 video still have it in the air around the Chinese New Year when China's coming forward. So I am expecting that we'll be able to see one shortly that maybe crosses in front of the sun or the moon, causing some form of eclipse, which again, if it happens, well, I'll say on the 5th, but if it happens on the 3rd, where we actually see the sighting of it, then that would be lining up with the 21st of January on the Julian calendar, which was when the blood moon eclipse occurred. Following on from that, it could obviously be making its way towards Earth, or at least that's how it could look. You know, they could be using various different technologies to make it look that way. But putting that aside, if that was to happen and we see something on the 3rd crossing in front of the moon or the sun, then that kind of lines up with the theory of it traveling slowly towards the Earth for the next, you know, couple of days. When the impact is actually, you know, there, I can't say definitively, but I would assume the 5th. Where it would impact, I don't know, but again, I'm assuming that would be the Atlantic, considering if we have either, you know, a nuclear activated volcano from Hawaii, or the volcano activated by a tsunami that's come from Japan from an earthquake, Um, Either way, the West Coast has already had its tsunami, so that's why I think the Atlantic would be the prime target for that one, because we know that there's a tsunami destined for the East Coast and the UK and various other locations around the Atlantic as well. And I've assumed that that's connected with the Poseidon submarine from Russia, and it still could be. I don't throw that this translation out at all, but I also, you know, think there may be another source of a major tsunami in the Atlantic, and it could be coming from above. All of this is just interpretation, mostly, but I think the main points where we're looking at for tsunamis, we've got these fish that seem to rise up to the surface of the water whenever there's a large-scale earthquake impending. So keep an eye out for that. That's just nature doing its thing. The possibility of that happening could generate a tsunami, which could then affect Hawaii, which could then affect the volcano, which could then affect the landslide or the Helena slump, which then causes the landslide and another tsunami, which then heads to the west coast. We could have the terrorist attacks in various locations across the United States and the US. And then we've obviously got this threatening to wipe out Israel in 3 days. Could be a reference to an actual 3-day time countdown to February the 4th. And that could line up with any terrorist attacks that take place on the 3rd, them being blamed on Iran. And then we move on to the 5th. We've got the State of the Union, watching out for Donald Trump. They may try and make it look like he's been shot or assassinated. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be watching the State of the Union, so that would be a prime time to do something like that if they want to cause mass chaos. But as I said, they've got this new technology called deepfake, where they can basically put another person's head onto another person's body and make it look real. So that could be the situation we see there, and Donald Trump could not be there at all, or various different, Congress members and cabinet members. Thinking of it, it's crazy because they could all not be there, and it could just be a whole deep fake studio set up. I laugh, but the possibility, though small, still exists. Either way, keep an eye out for anything like that happening on the 5th of February. If that happens, then be really on the lookout for the electricity going out prior to the tsunami hitting. That's the kind of way I think they'll do it. State of the Union, electricity out, possibly an earthquake. That might be the only warning of a tsunami coming in. And that's only if, the other things unfold, because I don't think it's just going to happen just like that. Otherwise, we're in the Julian timeline, as I said before, the 12th of February to the 18th of February, and then we're done. You guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching these videos. A small note, the channel has now climbed over a million views, so thank you guys for taking the time to view my thoughts. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.